How's everybody doing today? Just wanted to say thank y'all for joining in. We've got a good one for y'all today. We're going to be talking about radio advertising and how we are driving a lot of highly qualified listing leads to call into our offices, even in the middle of what's going on with a slightly slower real estate market for people to list their homes, buy their homes, help them buy homes as well. With that being said, I have two special guests on the line today. One of them you guys very well know, Mr. Damon Gettier. Say hello, Damon.
Hello, how you doing, sir?
Yes, sir. And then also, you co-own a company with a gentleman by the name of Mr. Brett Sharp. And I love the fact that y'all named it Sharper Radio. But say hello, Brett.
What's up? How you doing?
But anyways, so, I guess it's been, gosh, I don't know. How long have we been working together now? 6 months or a year, something like that. On the radio side, I guess it's been just over 6 months, 6 to 9 months, something like that. But anyways, so you guys have completely transformed my radio spend and radio results because I, like most people, figured I could do it better on my own. I was with an agency for a long period of time, and after that agency, I went and tried to invest in all the radio stuff on my own and try to figure out how to do frequency and figure out how to do negotiations. And I think what we found out whenever you just sort of brought you along for the ride, that about a third of the ads we thought were running never even made it to the air.
Yeah, right. Which isn't all bad because we get bonus spots for that too. But yeah.
Exactly. No, and so anyway, so I guess to tell the story. So we brought Brett along and said, "Look, man, it was a full-time position to try to just manage radio, negotiate new buys and negotiate and make sure that all the spots were running when they said they were running and listening to them and make sure that the jocks did the right thing. It was clearly a disaster. So I remember getting in bed with you guys on the radio side and said, look, help us out here. And so you've been doing a tremendous job ever since. And today I want to tell that story, just a little bit of what that looks and feels like. But before we do, a lot of people look to us and say, okay, radio, let's think about this. Isn't that the first thing to get cut in, a time such as this? And maybe you could go through and tell some previous stories about corporations that you've heard and businesses you've heard throughout the years that instead of when everybody else is dialing back, they actually dialed it up, and how much market share they picked up. So if we have some time, I'd like for you to discuss that as well. But, I don't want to talk too much. I want you guys to do the heavy lifting on the talking and explanation, and also make sure that people know how to reach out to you as well if they want to find out if their market's open. Because unfortunately, I think you guys, if I remember right, can only help one person per market, or whatever that may look like. So how people can reach out to you and get a consultation about if radio is available in their market. Make sure you hit on that, please, for everybody as well. But anyways, just to finish up on my story. So, since you've kind of went in, tweaked things, and gotten our frequency levels up, pretty significantly, we've gotten our highest number of active listings that we pretty much have ever had in terms of active listing phone calls. And I'm talking, tens, if not dozens per month, which is great. So it's really helped us out to be able to be that leader. And interesting enough, we've trimmed back most of our expired for sale by owner mailings because we're targeting these people through a combination of things. And one of those big things is radio. So we don't have to do as much image advertising as we did before because we're able to, be front and center on top of the airwaves. And in addition to that, we do some billboard advertising as well. And so for anybody that does do any image advertising, what we found is the minute that we turned radio on, but then again, whenever we corrected radio to the way it should be. Thank you, Brett. What we found is that the radio is kind of the 1-2 punch and actually makes whatever else you're already doing work significantly better. And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. If I have a billboard up and, the radio ad comes on, they're hearing the same message from multiple different mediums, if you will. And that makes each of those things significantly more effective than if they stood on their own. In other words, if I just had a billboard up, I might get a call. If I just ran radio, I might get a call. But if I do a mailer to an expired, and I also do a radio ad, it makes the mailer to the expired hold a lot more weight. Plus, I get the extra phone call off of the radio. So by running the extra radio ad, it enhances what's already being done. And in addition to that, it also stands on its own to generate new business. And I'll tell you the last thing that we've really realized here recently is that it helps my agents convert a lot better. We ran an internal poll, not to just our agents, but also to our past clients that we did business with in the past year. And we said, tell us, what is the number one reason that ultimately made you decide to pull the trigger and do business in the end? And it was really interesting because about 40% of our respondents said because of the advertisements that we've seen around, or because of, the recognition, or because of the name recognition, or, the respect that your team and your company has. And here's how we gain that respect is not just going out and selling houses. It's selling houses, doing a good job for others, but also putting ourselves out there in terms of marketing and advertising. And so whenever I run a radio ad, if the radio ad doesn't get a phone call, I still know that everybody that heard that radio ad at some point in the future, whenever they're sitting face to face with myself or one of my agents and deciding whether to do business with us, that investment into radio also helps my agents convert the leads they already have much better. And that's a really big point that a lot of people miss whenever you're trying to do return on investment in radio. Is you can't just wait, hey, did I get a phone call? Did they list their house and did it close? It's also, how well did it make my expired mailer work? How well did it make my billboard work? Or how well did my agent get a chance to convert at the kitchen table or working with this buyer because they happened to hear this radio ad? And then it starts compounding, a pretty high amount on the ROI side whenever you look at all those different aspects of the game. And last thing I want to say before, again, I shut up and let you guys take the reins here, is in 2008, radio was one of probably the biggest thing that helped us get through this slow turn in the market. And a lot of people misunderstand the fact that radio is something that needs to be cut whenever real estate markets slow down a little bit. In actuality, radio ads have a bigger response whenever people need to hire the ultimate professional and pay somebody to do a good job for them. And just to be more clear on what I'm saying, if the real estate market's phenomenal and everybody's cousin's uncle is a real estate agent and the server at the bar is a real estate agent, we're having a drink together, and I put a house in the MLS that naturally sells in 24 hours for more than list price, I don't need to pay extra money to a professional real estate agent in order to get results in service. But the reality is that the times that we're living in, we may have a little more of a crunch in being able to get homes sold still for top price, top dollar, and the consumers are realizing that. Now, the reality is the media is telling that story a little worse than what it really is, which in our favor could be in our favor. And with that being said, what that means is that if the media is telling the consumers that it's not that great of a time to sell your house and people are getting laid off and they're cutting production at this plant and buyers may not be out there as much as they were, the reality is that sellers that are thinking, I need to sell my house, they're not just going to call the cousin's uncle anymore. They're going to dial up a professional, which means now more than ever, professional advertising, online reviews, all of those things working together are more critical than ever. And if those things are in play together, and oftentimes in play simultaneously for the 1-2 punch, as I mentioned earlier, then that's who gets the phone calls during this time. So I want to argue that real estate, whenever the real estate market softens, it's not the time to cut radio. It's actually the time to double down on radio and spend more money on radio, because in 2008, just to share this with you guys, whenever the real estate market tanked in the middle of a recession, we lost market share and we doubled down on radio when we lost market share, and we pulled out of that within 6 months, whereas when it took the rest of the country 3 or 4 years to turn around. And it wasn't until 2011 and 2012 that most markets out there across the country started getting back to the 2008 levels in pricing. And on our real estate, and that was the same for our city that we live in here as well, in Charleston, South Carolina. However, our real estate team only took 6 months to 12 months to completely rebound. And it was because we doubled down on marketing and radio advertising during this time. So anyways, Damon, I want to turn it over to you and let you just kind of run and tell your story a little bit. I wanted to jump on because I know you and Brett, work in this company together. I'm not affiliated at all with the radio company. I know that's completely y'all's deal. But I wanted to come on and just tell my version of the story of exactly what's going on so that everybody can see, hey, this has worked. And I thought 6 months ago, I was open to the idea of Brett coming along, but I thought I was killing it. And I didn't realize until Brett pointed a bunch of things out that I wasn't killing it and actually not running all the ads I should be running. So anyways, Damon, I want to turn it over to you and let you kind of run with it from here.
Yeah, so thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Brett and I, we have the company Sharper Radio. We've been doing radio together for 9 years, maybe 10 years. We started the company together, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, something like that. And you know, I'm the real estate agent. I understand ROI. So what I bring to the relationship, besides my relationship with agents, is I understand ROI, return on investment, and I understand what makes a real estate market tick. And I started, when I first got into radio, I started trying to do it myself. You know, I approached stations and I wanted a whole bunch of ads all over the station. And what I found out was that I didn't know anything about radio and that I needed someone that did. And Brett and I had become friends at that point. And I refer to him as the radio scientist. Brett got into real estate right about the time that Al Gore invented the internet. I think they invented radio and the internet at the same time. And he just, I'm real estate. I mean, if somebody asks who I am, I'm a real estate agent. And if someone were to ask me what Brett is radio. Mm-hmm. And he's all things radio. He understands radio frequency, reach, all that stuff. And he's brought me along and taught me a lot, but still, when somebody asks me questions, I just go ask Brett. And so, you know, it's been a yin and a yang. It's been a relationship that works really well because we understand each other. And so, you know, Brett's all things radio to me. Anything you want to say, Brett, or have I said it all enough? Your ego big enough? Your head big enough now?
Well, no. I think it is important to know that I am still in radio. So, and Damon and I only work with real estate agents specifically. So we've got this sucker dialed in. When Damon and I started 6 years ago, Damon's been on the air for like 9 or 10 years. And he went from just doing okay to being the #1 real estate agent in Roanoke, Lynchburg in the New River Valley. I mean,
let me jump in. So I flipped from 100% REO, doing a couple hundred deals a year, to in 12 months, 100% resale real estate, doing no REO, and didn't drop a single sale. Stayed at a couple hundred deals a year, and it was solely because of implementing radio in that scenario. So you're right, 100%.
So Damon goes, hey man, this is killing it for me. I got a couple of friends in real estate. Can you help negotiate their rates and their schedules? So we did that with great success. And we were like, yeah, we got something here. So we just jumped all in, and that's what we've been doing ever since. And before Jeff jumps off, because I know Jeff's got to run here in a little bit, but Jeff does radio right, and I appreciate that. The thing that we did was just brought it all kind of together. Kept a central message amongst all the stations, and Jeff spends a crap ton of money. I don't exactly know what that budget is, but I know that when Damon and I buy, we've got a certain frequency in mind, and I appreciate that Jeff, I don't know who taught you how to do radio, but how to buy radio, but Jeff gets 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weekly frequency, and that's what's effective. So I think that, you know, the main thing is we buy the right radio stations and buy the right frequency, have the right message. You got that, you're going to win.
When you say frequency, just for people that are still trying to wrap their head around this thing, when you say frequency, you're talking about on average how many times a consumer that listens to X radio station would hear my ad. You know, so if I run it 14 times, it may be that it's expected that they hear it 4 times that week, you know, 4 of the 14 times or something like that. So that would be a 4 frequency. So it's not, the frequency is not the number of ads running, it's how many times a consumer on that station is expected to sort of hear your ad. And 2, I just want to speak to the amount of money we spend. It is a lot. However, we started with $1,500, $2,000, and that's not, you know, that's not recommended. That was 10, 12 years ago when ads were cheap. I'll let you talk about what a starting budget probably should be. And I know that's different from market to market, big market versus smaller market. But in a smaller market, like in a market like Damon's market, you know, I would assume that, you know, $3,000, $4,000 probably gets you a long way on the radio. You know, whereas if you're in a big city, you need $20,000, $30,000 on the radio, right? So I'll let you guys sort of speak to that, but I don't want anybody to feel intimidated about the fact that I'm not spending $10,000 or $20,000 a month on radio and they just not start at all.
So let me jump into that because it is really market dependent. Okay. And there's really, and everybody thinks there's a rhyme or a reason. There really isn't a rhyme or a reason. Like my rates are basically the same rates as Denver, Colorado, which is,
Gee.
is that, right? My rates are
How
twice.
expensive?
So my rates in Roanoke, Virginia, which has a small demo, about 450,000 total metro market share for 27 counties. Okay. My rates are about 2 to 3 times what yours are, Jeff. And you're in a
No
market.
kidding.
Yeah,
So
you're
I'm
in a,
spending 20, 30 bucks a spot. You're spending closer to $100 a spot.
no, I'm spending 215 a spot.
But let me just qualify.
Now,
Hang on. Let me qualify
yeah,
that
yeah,
that the
yeah.
cume on the station that Damon's buying is significantly higher than the top stations in Charleston. The cume on this one radio station rivals the cume on.
So we're more rural, so we have much less options for listeners to listen to. And there's 2 country stations here, which is like David and Goliath. Okay. And so that's, and it's just weird. It's different per market. And really and truly, all anybody can do that. The question is reach out to us and let us get rates. I mean, it's just, and some hold rate integrity at a very high level, which means everybody's going to pay the same or within the same realm. Some stations are much more negotiable. And so it really just depends.
Well, it's true. It's interesting because in Charleston, for example, our average price point is 285, 275, 285. And my spots per are cheaper there than they are, say, in the Midlands in Columbia, South Carolina, because we have a team there as well. In Columbia, we spend probably 20 to 30% more per radio, but our average price point is 80 grand less. And so a lot of people think that radio stations could care less what your average price point is, whether it's 200,000 or 2 million. They don't care about that. They don't think about it in terms of that, because that was my big thing. I was like, wait a minute, I'm in this market now, and my average price point's 100 grand less than it is in this other market, and they're charging me 30% more on radio. It didn't make any sense. And the radio stations could care less what the average price per on a dollar house is. It doesn't matter to them. So it's a combination of size of the market and a combination of whatever, how much competing edge there is on all these radio stations combined. And when you say cume, Brett, you're talking about cumulative listeners, right? So
Total number of listeners listening to the radio station, unique listeners, individual listenership. Yeah.
So in Damon's case, this one big country station may have, 150, 200,000 cumulative listeners. And one of my stations, because I have so many different stations across the board, then I may have 40,000, 50,000 cumulative listeners. So
Right.
It's the size of the station, and also it's the type of music that's played on that station, or talk radio or whatever, which we can jump into that as well. Brett, I'm sure you have some opinions on that. If somebody's starting off and picking a station, walk us through like how you do just a very small general analysis. Obviously, I know that you have a lot of proprietary rankers and things like that on the backside that, even I don't have access to, that kind of tells you based on the spend, whether they should go country stations, pop stations, talk radio, all those different things. And I know that's part of the analysis that you do, but give us just a little bit, kind of what that thought and feels like, and, maybe even, how that process looks for you to help them figure that out.
Yeah, I think that's pretty easy. The formats that Damon and I have found, and Jeff, even you have found that work the best are the most loyal listeners, and news talk and country by far have the most loyal listeners. Right now during the pandemic, people are seeking out news. News talk stations are absolutely killing it. And the ratings right now, news talk stations are pegging the meters, man. And radio's really inexpensive right now. If you were going to jump in, and I think this is something important to mention that Jeff mentioned earlier, radio is not an impulse buy. People don't hear a commercial and go, I'm going to sell my house. I just heard Jeff selling and he's going to get me a great. No, we call it in Sharper Radio, we call it TOMA, TOMA, top of mind awareness. When it's time for you to sell your home, Jeff's going to be the first person Damon Gettier is going to be the first person that you think of, because you've heard these spots over and over, the guarantees, man, I know Jeff's going to sell my home in 30 days. I know Damon's going to sell it within 59 days. So it's not an impulse buy. You've got to keep it out there. Now's the time to jump in, because advertisers have just jumped ship. The first thing people want to cut is advertising. Jeff mentioned that. So your spot is going to be heard more now because there are even fewer spots on the radio. When I say spot, I mean commercial. So this is a prime time to jump in. If you can jump in, and Damon and I go in, and Jeff, we go in and do a full market analysis. We find out through qualitative research, who are you after? What's your target listing price? What's your median household income? And we find out who best fits you as far as station, and then we buy the right radio station. We only buy big. We buy the biggest stations we can, and we buy frequency. So it's not too expensive.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Let me share one more thing here that I think is important for a lot of people to understand too. Whenever you ran, through your rankers on the back end, we switched around some of my stations because I thought I had the best station and I didn't. And when I went out and did it just based on, size. And so here's the thing. Some of the rankers that you have that show the size and the true number of listeners isn't the public fudged rankers that a lot of people have access to. So I think that that's important for people to understand that, and here's the other thing too. Whenever I hear you say, a lot of people pull back on radio, and then here we are saying, look, go and spend money on radio. It's important that people understand the people that are pulling back on radio are twofold. It's either A, the publicly traded companies, the big national deals that are part of the stock market. Of course, the stocks, stock market percentages are down as a result of that. All advertising is in the process of being cut. Or the people that, were not essential and are required to be on site in order to work. For example, gosh, I don't know, like a mobile car detailing or, chiropractor. I would think some chiropractors probably aren't doing radio during this time. But the people that are cutting radio either have to because of the stock market, or B, have to because they can't do business. And so I just want to make sure that everybody understands the reason we're suggesting you do this is because that's a big opportunity for something that still works really, 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 really well. And the last thing I want to say before I jump off and let you guys finish up is if you're in a market, and you're like, I wonder if this market's available, shoot us a private message here on the Facebook page. We won't, share it out, with anybody except for Brett and Damon, just to see if your city is available. And this, because it is, doesn't mean that you have to spend any money. It's just kind of opens the conversation up to see if there's even a radio station right now that we would recommend that you jump on. So if you're watching this, you're like, I wonder if radio is available in my area with Sharper Radio, and if there's a station that would make sense. I'd be happy to take a look at that for you and pair you up with Brett to have a conversation. So just shoot us a direct message here on the Facebook message, and we'll connect you guys back. So I'm going to let you guys finish it up, Ben.
Thanks, Jeff. So going back to what Brett just said, I'm going to slow it down for just 1 second. When you want to look at radio marketing, you need to be able to tell us, who your ideal seller is. Okay, like age range, income range, house value. We have the ability, we being Brett, has the ability to take that information, put it into some software, and pull out what stations have the most active listeners that meet those three criteria. Okay. And so, a lot of people say, I listen to pop, I want to advertise on pop station. Well, there's only a couple markets in the nation that have a high enough cume of pop listeners that have the ability to buy and sell to advertise on. There's only a couple stations. Country has a very high demographic. We have people in very affluent markets, so like nobody in my market listens to country. You'd be fooled because they do. Okay. News talk does really well in almost all markets because it tends to be a more conservative listenership. They're actively listening. You don't want passive listeners. You don't want people that is background noise. You want people that are engaged with the jock, and Brett, are very strategic on where we place the ads. You can go to almost any station and get a schedule that's far cheaper than what Brett or I would suggest. But it's because those are what's called typically runner stations. It's when nobody's buying. And you can get those spots really cheap. We want you to be endorsed by a local talent, if at all possible. And we want to run you during specific times of day when the listener is engaged with the jock. We don't want passive listeners. If anything's passive, we want that to be a free bonus spot the station gives you. And the reason it's free and bonus is because people aren't actively listening. They're not actively engaged with the jock. Brett, you want to throw anything in here?
Yeah, I just think that what you just said, it makes me think of the shoe sale analogy. Damon and I buy the big stations, and we buy a lot of the big stations because you've got to do it right. My shoe sale analogy is you go to the fountain in the middle of the mall, and there's two people sitting there, and you go up and you go, "Hey, shoes half price, shoes half price, shoes half price." Or you go up to the fountain in the mall, and there are 500 people there, and you go, "Hey, shoes half price, shoes half price, shoes half price." Who do you think is going to sell more shoes? The bigger station with more listeners. It just is. It just works like that. And I think the other thing that's important to let you know is real estate is a big category in radio. There are a lot of real estate agents on in radio. The first thing Damon and I do is we go in and see what kind of traffic is there, because the last thing we want to do is put one of our agents on a station that's already saturated with real estate, because we run the risk of the other agent getting credit for our agent's advertising. So we look at the traffic, we look at your specific demographics. If you know that it's a 35 and older male or 35 and older female who has a household income of 100,000, if that's what you're looking for, we can narrow that down and go, this is the right station for you. Typically, what Damon was talking about, top 40 stations, it's called CHR, Contemporary Hit Radio, is typically a female, 18 to 34 female demo. And it depends on the market. In some markets, younger demo females buy, and some markets they don't. It's just, we've found that typically our agents want adults 25 plus or adults 35 plus with a median household income dependent on market of either 75,000 or 150,000 or whatever. So we can actually hone in if you're in Denver and your average list price is $400,000 for a house. A lot easier to hit an ROI when it's $400,000 house, but we can go in and go, we want home values minimum 350,000 and find the right station for you.
Yeah, the other thing I would tell everybody is that you need to be prepared for radio. And what I mean by that, depending on your market size, I call it a donut effect. Some people call it a target effect. But people have to be in their cars listening long enough to hear your ads. So typically what's going to happen, like if, let's just say my market, Roanoke, Virginia. Roanoke's a very small market. So what happens is the people that drive the longest hear the commercial most, and they tend to reach out first. So typically when you start a campaign, your first callers will be further out from your target center. Then as time goes on, they come more in and in and in and in. And so your heart of your market will be the last to respond. It's usually further out that does. They're in the car more. They can hear the commercial more. It hits that frequency and trips their mind further the longer they're in the car. That and traveling salespeople hear it the most.
Do you remember the first one that you got? Damon called me and he goes, "Dude, I'm glad to be on the radio. You had just gotten started." And it was you were about 3 or 4 months in, maybe 4.5 months in before you got the first call. The first call was from an hour and a half away. The station that he's on has a huge signal. The station that I do Damon's endorsements, but it was like an hour and a half away, and it was a manufactured home. And you were like, "So I'm going to go sell a trailer an hour and a half away." I was like, "Dude, they've been in the car longer. You're going to get some of those." So it did. What's that?
I did it.
Did you? Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's the other thing that I think is important that Jeff was talking about is Damon calls it a force multiplier. But they see your signs, they hear your ads, and the conversions become much easier, right, Damon?
We call them come list me's, and we do enough of this around the nation, Brett. You know, everybody calls it a come list me. I really don't know what a competitive listing situation is anymore. I mean, I know we listed 3 houses today, and if we don't list one, we're like, what the frick happened? We have a 90% list ratio. If we meet them, 90% of them list. It might be a little higher than that. It's really surprising if we don't list them. I mean, it just happens. And I think one thing before we end this call we need to talk about is it's not just being on the right station, okay? You got to be on the right station. You have to have the right talent endorsing you. And a lot of agents, look, I can get on the radio station. I can say, hi, I'm Damon Gettier. I'm the #1 selling real estate agent here for the past 8 years. I've sold more homes than anybody. I've sold over 3,000 houses. I sound like a pompous ass, okay? But if I have the #1 talent on the station saying, hey, my friend, well, Brett, you do them. You say how you say it.
Well, I can say the things about Damon he can't say about himself to make him sound like a pompous butt. I can say, I trust this guy. This is the #1 real estate agent. He is ranked, Virginia's Living's best real estate agent of 2019. I can brag about him where if he said it on his own spots, it doesn't have the same impact. The other thing is he doesn't have the market equity that the local disc jockey does. We don't use national jocks or national talent. We typically, Jeff does a good job of it because Jeff sounds good. He's been in the market for a long time. Jeff does some of his own spots. He buys, talent endorsements, and outside of that day part, then he runs his spots. But for the most part, Damon and I buy the local talent that the talent that has a relationship with the listeners. Listeners feel like they know them, they've grown up with them, they've listened to them for years. Those are the people that listeners are going to trust. So that's what we buy.
And so the recipe to be successful is the right station, with the right talent, with the right message, with the right USP. And if you're running ads without a USP, unique selling proposition, you're really cutting yourself short. And one, I do not believe in bait and switch. And so you have to be able to back up USP. I use 59 or free. Most of our people use 59, 29, 39, 23, 63, something are free. Everybody's got disclosures on exactly how it works. And if anybody wants to have an idea how that works, send us a message. We'll show you how that works. We do not do bait and switch. We offer it to 100% of our sellers. It's always offered. Some do it, some don't. It's always offered. And we've had 0 complaints. We've been running this program for either 9 or 10 years, 0 complaints. It is 100% legit. Other agents are going to hate you. They're going to say, oh, you offer bait and switch. No, you're not. We don't ever offer bait and switch. We always offer it. But look, haters are going to hate. Let them hate. If nobody's talking about you, you're not doing anything. Just going to tell you right now.
Two other real quick things, Damon. One thing is, and Damon can elaborate on this, don't go into this with a 3-month plan. This is not a 3-month plan. You need reach and frequency. It takes time to build. It takes time, and it just gets better and better and better. The longer you're on, the better it gets.
I wish Jeff was still on here because he'd tell you, any marketing plan you go into, and Lauren, you're a marketing lady, any marketing plan you go into and you don't have at least a 6-month plan, it's not a marketing plan, okay? It's a hope and a prayer, and your prayer better be strong, okay? So I would say at least 6 months. A year's better. And look, if you don't have the funds to do it, just don't. Because most people that don't have success in it say, I'm good for 6 months, but I have money for 2. And into the 2, and they've had no results, they're like, I'm out. And they're out probably a month to 2 months before they ever had a chance of it even working. And Lauren, you're a marketing girl. You've been doing it for a marketing lady, for Jeff Cook for long enough. Throw your 2 cents worth in.
Yeah, no, I think the 2 things that really stood out to me that I never realized until we started working with Brett was, one, when there's other competing real estate agents on those channels, that at some point, if we're not drowning them out, they're getting credit for our ad. And that was just a concept that I had never really even thought about. But then 2, if we really want to be on a station and there are a couple, like, we have to drown them out. Like, we're going to have to spend more than normal to drown them out. And then we'll start getting the credit from them as well. So just being a little bit more strategic on that. And my one question for you, Brett, right now, because obviously we're writing radio ads right now, what would you say is like the best message that you've seen coming through just to create reassurance that real estate can happen and that it can happen safely, and just creating reassurance with our consumers?
Well, for one, just the message that you're on shows company stability. This company's still advertising. That's company stability right there. But I think the other thing is, and Jeff does a great job of it, what we try to do is be real. People can sniff out fake. Be real. We want to help you. As bad as it sounds, and Damon, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I feel like in a down economy, to look at it from an opportunistic approach, this may create some listings. This is when we shine. Our radio works better. It works great all the time, but it works best in a down economy. When it's hard to sell a home, that's when our agents become the hero. But to be real, to go, we genuinely want to help. If you're behind on your note, you have a major payment, we can help. As a matter of fact, even during this pandemic, when I talk about Damon on the air, I go, even during the pandemic, this guy will guarantee to sell your home in 59 days, or he won't take a commission. So I think being real, having the jock talk about it is keeps it real. Unless you've got somebody like Jeff who does great radio and can sound natural. It's kind of an oxymoron to go. The hardest thing to do is to sound natural, but when agents are doing their own spots, that is an issue. Jocks keep it real. Jocks know what they're doing. Jocks have the relationship. So I think just from a message standpoint, we're here. Yes, we may have to work with you virtually, but we're here and we're still advertising. We've got you. We got your back.
Yeah. And how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more? What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
I think, Damon, you want to send them to you?
That's fine. Either saying, if you want to, just message me, get on the Realty Partners Facebook page, send me a message, and I'll do a preliminary interview with you, find out what you're looking for. And Brett's the scientist, so I try to keep Brett doing scientific stuff, doing the studies, doing the research, stuff like that, just so it doesn't get bogged down with kind of the early stages. He's really involved in the entire process, but I tried to gather some of the information so that he can do the research for us.
And one other quick thing I wanted to mention, and Damon, you'll be able to echo this sentiment. Don't go in thinking, I'll start a little bit, and then if it works, I'll get bigger. That's not the right approach. You got to go in, balls to the wall, and then you pull back. Once it starts working, then you pull back, but you go in heavy. You go in getting that reach and frequency immediately. You don't wait. Make sure you get the 3, 4, 5 frequency per week immediately. Don't wait on it. Start heavy, then back down.
Yeah, if you're not willing to investigate the frequency, just don't do it. And the reason I say don't do it is twofold. One, you're not gonna make any money. Two, you're gonna say radio doesn't work. And radio does not work when it's not done correctly. There is a science to it. There is a method to it. And we see too many people waste a lot of money because they do it halfway, do what they can afford. And look, I was fortunate when I started that I had REO money that helped me afford it. And it got me, I didn't have to make any money off of it for 6 months. And it was like 5 months. It was right at the 5-month mark. It was kind of weird. I'll tell you a really short story. I was listing 10, 12, 15 REOs a month. I got caught up in that whole Fannie Mae thing where Fannie Mae had that whole mess where they had told us to do it the wrong way, and Congress got involved. They cut off like 120 people. I was one of those 120. So I went from 100% REO to 100% resale in one day. And it just so happened it was right at the 5 months mark where it started happening. And I was blessed. I started picking up radio right from them and never missed a beat. But it was about 5 months for anything happened. And that was when the market was still rough, And so perception is reality. Radio can build, if you're a good quality agent, which I don't think anybody's not good quality should be doing this. If you're not a good agent, you're not quality, don't do it. But if you are, radio can really get that message out to the listeners. They can really get it out to the people who need you, who need to hear who you are.
It's expensive to do it right, but it works depending on your market. And that's the other thing is Damon and I work with, it doesn't matter what market you're in. We work with a guy in a small market in Arkansas where we were able to get him for like $1,500 a month and has a huge frequency. But that's expensive for his market. It's expensive if you do it right, but it's expensive because it works.
So my lifetime average, let me throw this figure out. So my lifetime average ROI on radio, including the last 2 years, which hasn't been as good because real estate's been really good and it doesn't work as well, has been 7.1 to 1 ROI. If you exclude the last 2 years, I'm at a 9.1 to 1 ROI on radio. Radio works. Radio is effective.
But you've been at it for a long time too. You've built that. Yeah.
It's got to be done well. It's just got to be done well.
Well, awesome. Well, thank y'all both so much for jumping on here. That was just a lot of insight. And again,
Thank you for not cleaning your wall before you came on. I appreciate that.
listen, I'm gonna get some spray to it.
Hey, Lauren,
I've been to my house.
being the host, and you've never been the host before. And I think you did an incredible job.
Yeah, we love Lauren. She's awesome.
Awesome. All right, y'all. Well, thank you again. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.